Now, I also want to talk about something that I've talked about before we talk about the paper a little bit, that I've spoken of in my face-to-face land classes up north regarding ways of reading. And one of the ways of thinking about this is to think of in terms of glasses, eyeglasses. It's not the greatest metaphor in the world, but it serves. Earlier this semester up in your my face-to-face classes, we talked about the idea that people take sunglasses, right, that have different flavors to them. Some people like amber, some people like green. I've even got an older, non-traditional student up there that admitted that when she was young, she got rosy tinted glasses because she wanted to see the world as all rosy. I'm not necessarily thinking in that way, but I am enlisting a Kenneth Burke idea here regarding terministic screens. If you pick up any book, there's going to be screens between you and that text. And I can't help any of the screens that I was born to live with. I can't help who I am any more than you can help who you are and the narrative that you're born into. So obviously when I pick up any novel in this absolute endless wonderful abyss full of novels, I'm going to bring my screens to bear on the text. And they're pretty obvious, aren't they? I'm white, okay? I can't help bring the screen of whiteness to this text. Jeff, you keep making these things light up if you could. Sorry to send you into the servile. I'm white. I know the words to Sonny and Cher songs, right? I'm male. I'm a guy. So I read this as a dude. There's no stopping that. I was born a Roman Catholic. No helping that. I'd love to be a Jew, but I'm not, right? No, were I a Jew, a Jewish man, which would be really cool, my reading of this text would probably be fundamentally different than the way I read it now. And I think you can understand that. We now arrive at the idea that I need to put before you that actually makes me a little bit sad. I'm standing in the middle of all these books. I feel like I'm surrounded by literature, and I am. But I'm also kind of, in some senses, standing in the middle of an institution. Literature is an institution. And I know this because I've been serving it for 25 years, and I'm going to serve it for the rest of my life because it's the only consciousness we have. But there's a little sad thing to understand about institutions. They exclude people. They marginalize people. They push people out. And literature is that kind of institution. And that's why we need to just very briefly take a look at some different ways of reading the text. There's a school of literary theory called feminist literary theory, because women know that literature has excluded them for 25 centuries, all right? So if a woman picks up The Great Gatsby, they're going to pick this up, and what they're going to want to do is study how women are portrayed in this novel. What are we supposed to think about Jordan Baker? What about Daisy Buchanan? Does she know what's happening to her? Or is she some sort of bimbo, like I've heard students tell me for years? That's up for you to decide. But a feminist is going to go into this book, and they're going to be interested in that. We also have another way of thinking about literature, which is Marxist literary theory. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about Karl Marx, but my understanding of the theory is basically this. Marxist critics are interested in the idea that literature can be created for political purposes. And then there's some really interesting questions to ask. When any of these writers write a novel, what are they doing? Are they criticizing and interrogating power structures? Or are they acquiescing to them, right? Are they being their agents? In our face-to-face classes up north, we talked about the idea that composers like Shostakovich and Tchaikovsky, they were Russian composers. And you know what? They had to make Russian-sounding music, or they would have gotten in all kinds of trouble. I think of the Chinese writer, Bai Dao. He's over there. Why does he live in France right now? Well, because he won the Nobel Prize for Soul Mountain, which was a novel very critical of the Chinese government. If he went home, he'd be arrested. So Marxist literary critics are interested in who has money, who has power, and who doesn't. A Marxist reading would have a field day with the idea that Jay Gatsby has all this money from ill-gotten gain, and Nick Carraway is just scrimping by on his crappy job that he has. There's money in here. There's power structures in here. And you know what? There's another school of thought that I'm not that familiar with because it's not my story. But let's not forget that that gay people have been excluded from literature for 25 centuries too, from the writing and their portrayals in literature. So someone who picks this up that's GLBT is going to go into this novel, and they're going to be they're going to be looking to reconstitute that missing aspect of our humanity. like I said last film, I'm not trying to tie this novel to a chair and beat it with a rubber hose. I'm just trying to let you know that there are different ways of approaching any text. You can read them differently, and it's sometimes fun to try out different ways of reading, and I just want you to know that. Now, in terms of writing this paper, don't get all bent out of shape over it. I'm not expecting that you're going to advance scholarship on Fitzgerald. There may be several ways that you can go. You might simply tell me, for instance, what you think the purpose of this story is. What is F. Scott Fitzgerald doing? What was the aim of the book? That might be important to you, maybe not. Sorry, I heard footsteps. They make me nervous. I'm pretty paranoid. Maybe you'll go into the mode of comparison and contrast. Maybe you'll compare a couple of characters. It'd be pretty interesting to compare the way Jay Gatsby sees the world with the way Nick Carraway sees it. There's a point in the novel where Nick Carraway says, "You can't bring back the past." Jay Gatsby says, "Of course you can, old sport. Of course you can." They see the world very differently. Love the idea of comparing and contrasting things, although that's a lot of work. Writing about one thing is easy. Holding up two things to the light, that takes work. Be sure to give me concrete examples of what you're talking about in the novel. Point to it as best you can. Cite it MLA style and quote it if you want, either in the text or in block quotes, or just point to it. Try to avoid the thing I was just really good at when I was a boy on this campus years ago, glittering generalizations. Give me a concrete example of what you're talking about. Maybe you'll write the entire paper about one character. Just sort of make a claim about the character and then back it up by pointing at the text. You also might take a look at just telling me what you think of the story. We got all these old elements of literature that make me feel like a schoolmarm in a flower print dress with a beehive hairdo. But, excuse me, we do have these old elements that you might stick with. I know you were schooled on them when you went to high school. We have plot, we have character, and we have setting. The setting is always more than the setting. If you're reading a story about a boat, right, on the ocean, it's not just the ocean. The ocean is always the subconscious, right? Everybody knows that. And you might just make a comment on what this story did for you or to you. Did it remind you of anything? What do you have to say about it? Good story, not so good story? Make the call. Write a paper about it. I'd like to end with the idea that we have different kinds of plots in literature. E.M. Forster was an Englishman who said that we had 36 plots, right? Wrote an essay called The 36 Plots. Sat down and just cooked them out, however many he could think of. We have Borges, who claims that we only have 3 stories in literature, and then we just keep retelling them. The story of the Odyssey, the story of the Iliad, and the story of the 4 Gospels. John Gardner, who's in here somewhere, he's around here somewhere. Where are you, John? He once said that there's only 2 kinds of stories in literature. In one, a stranger comes to town. And in the other, a man goes on a journey. That's the most hilarious thing in the world to English majors, because in order for a stranger to come to town, somebody's got to go on a journey. I defy you to list great novels, as many as you can, that don't have some kind of journey, whether it's Odysseus or Huckleberry Finn. The greatest stories down in this basement are about people traveling and experiencing things as they travel. I know I'm editorializing, and I'm not trying to convert anyone, but I think we only have 2 stories in literature. In one, a character earns salvation, and in another, the character is condemned. Well, I think you all know there's blood at the end of The Great Gatsby. This novel will bear that little theory out, and you're going to get there soon enough. I hope you too, also for this, not for the quiz, for the sake of the quiz, but just to get it in your heart. I hope you read that essay I posted up on D2L by Jorge Luis Borges on the telling of the tale. That is an absolutely elegant essay in which he wonders why all of these novels written in modernity result in the breaking down or the degeneration of a character. In other words, in modern novels, the character's destroyed almost every time. Everybody gets it. American literature's famous for that. The stage is littered with bodies. There's epics down here too, though, but no one writes them anymore. They were written when we believed in happiness, when the hero survived on the last page and kept going. We're in the 21st century, which is the age of tragedy. And tragedy is most definitely what Fitzgerald smells like to me. See you in the next lesson. Sorry I got so long-winded here.